Traveling to different countries other than your own is more than just a trip. It's a time to experience, learn, and if you'll pardon the cliche, a time to open one's eyes to life outside of the bubble of what one knows and lives day to day. The internet, TV, and media connects us. It gives us a sense of what is overseas, how life may be different. But until one sees it for oneself, it's only just a foreign concept. This all becomes even truer when it's the first time outside of the US bubble. Traveling to Europe for the first time, I didn't know what to expect. I knew it was going to be different, but I didn't know how different. But that was the most interesting part to me, the fact that we're so different, yet so very similar. However, when addressing business, I focused during the trip on how an American would have to adapt to cultural changes to do business successfully. Understanding how the United States versus Spain, Germany, and France individually and collectively is imperative for an American's professional achievement abroad. It only makes sense to look at these different facets in the same order they were experienced during the trip. So first we'll look at the 3 countries visited and then see collectively how marketing efforts would need to be adjusted for an American mindset to one that would fit the country's needs. The first place visited was Barcelona, Spain, the place of especially long days. Maria, our tour guide, made it clear to us what a typical workday was like. For many Spaniards, it's typical to go from about 7:30 in the morning to 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And there are a few reasons for this change from the typical American 9-to-5 workday. The first is the use of public transport, which makes it easier to get to work, but also takes a little longer. Secondly, a widespread part of Spanish culture is the daily siesta. A 2-hour lunch is nothing out of the norm for a Spanish worker. According to the article Lunch Date, You and Your Desk, published by Amy Collins on August 21st through the ABC News, 45% of full-time employees said they do not take a real lunch break, and 25% say they spend their day doing something other than eating. Lastly, 1/3 of respondents said they skip lunch altogether at least once each week. I noticed while we were there, anytime you could stop and look around and see people stop to just enjoy their surroundings, whether it was sitting on a street bench with a friend or lying in the grass in a park, people were able to slow down and be still for a little while. The next stop on our trip was Cologne, Germany. Here, like the rest of Germany, business was much more rigid than in the other countries. Germans in general are much more what we would call by the books than Americans are. When the street sign says don't walk, you don't walk, even if there are no cars coming. This, quote, by the books and by the rules mentality translates to all facets of business as well. While we were touring IGUS, the plastic company, it was interesting to understand how the employment laws were different than here in the States. The laws are so much more in favor of the employee rather than the employer. In Germany, there's no such thing as employment at will, according to Wilmer Hale. And there may be more mandated public holidays that allow for more days off for the employees, again favoring the employee rather than the employer. The last place we visited on the trip was Dijon, France. Many Americans stereotype the French to be lazy and unhelpful. This negative preconceived notion would make it difficult for an American to go in and do business if they felt they will not be helped even before meeting the clients. However, I feel that this stereotype could not be more false. Especially while in Dijon, I found that people were most helpful and were willing to try their best to communicate as effectively as possible, despite the language and cultural differences. Finally, looking at the 3 countries collectively, I found similarities in their lifestyles. The use of open markets along streets and the outdoor lifestyle, including more walking and biking around, accounts for one of the big changes between here in the States and there in Europe. Marketers cannot rely on food packaging to lure in consumers, but rather the owners of the shop must market themselves by being in the correct location, as well as using word of mouth to get their name out. Serving the customers and creating loyal customers will only help entice consumers to shop there too. Additionally, people are not on their phones constantly like they are here in the States. People are glued to their phones here where they're not at all in Europe. Therefore, the ability for advertising and marketing through mobile app platforms, push notifications, and mobile coupons becomes essentially a money pit for companies. Transitioning thought from thinking like a marketer in the United States to critically thinking and brainstorming how to market successfully in Europe is something I still ponder day to day, even after the trip. Life is so different there, yet so very similar. We are different, yes, but we are all also consumers seeking need satisfaction. So in turn, we're really all the same.